Captain's log. Stardate 041920. This planet continues to endure the effects of the coronavirus. I have beamed down to this planet to witness how their religious churches are responding to it. We are still unsure whether their faith will survive much longer, but we have seen signs of hope. I, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, will be logging this ongoing journey of faith, in fact. My entry today is about God's purpose for his people. Every form of intelligent life wants to have a purpose. It gives them motivation. It gives them something to do, something to chase. There are many different things people chase down here. Some are satisfied with chasing a sports team. They chase their team's championship, even though they really have little to nothing to do with it. Many of them chase riches, not just income, but wealth. They want as much toys and security as money can buy them. Sadly, many of them have ridden this turbo lift to success, only to find themselves in a worse place than where they started. Now, like our own people, they believe each person must decide for themselves what their purpose is. For those of us on the starship, we have formed a team. We formed a team around the purpose to boldly go where no one has gone before. But these people of faith are different. They believe God gives them a specific purpose. And while they believe that each of them have a unique purpose, it seems like few of them find it. I think that's because many of people set out on a God trek, if you will, but quite a few of them give up. So what are the key factors? And whether a person thrives during this long voyage, or they just end up floating around in space. It says in the ancient text that Jesus once told a story about a farmer. One day the farmer went out to plant seeds. He took a handful of seeds and he tossed them loosely in his hand as he walked. And as he's scattering the seeds, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. And still others fell on the good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Now, I've been thinking about these words, and I think I can explain it better by recalling some of our own history. I went into our databanks and pulled up some groups of people that we sent down to colonize planets. Now, we sent one group to the planet Pathway 4. The problem was this team had no knowledge or desire even to learn how to establish a society. We tried to teach them, but they did not really hold interest. And so the colonization never really took hold, and this team was soon dissipated. Now, this man, Jesus, is definitely the most influential person that ever existed on this world. There's really little debate about that. He claims to have come to offer people a better, fuller life. And yet it's strange that so many people refuse to look at his teachings for themselves. They may take the word for it from other people, or they may take skeptics' word for it, but very few seem to be committed to checking out whether his wisdom is something that speaks to them and their lives. Now, people are but seeds that they get planted, but they never really get into the ground, and they remain on the surface. And when that happens, the birds come and eat them up. So in this story, the seeds represent people. But while literal seeds don't get to control where they are thrown, people do get to choose where they are planted. And Jesus is clearly saying that unless a person is committed to learning about him, they will never grow. Now, do you remember the team we sent down to the planet Rough? Now, that team got off to a much better start. They worked so hard to begin with when they first got there. But they worked so hard that they were soon tired, and then a massive storm, hit their base. So at that point, being exhausted, they just gave up. They lost all hope, and the mission was soon scratched. Jesus is teaching a similar lesson here. Seeds that end up on the rocky soil have no strong roots. They flourish for a bit, but once hardships come, they lose hope. People expected maybe their growth to only last a short time, so they didn't pace themselves. They didn't rest as well as working. They never found the right balance. See, so many people of faith down here seem to sprint a little bit with Jesus. They go around the track with him a couple times, but they're not prepared to go the distance. Do you remember the team we sent down to the planet Thorn? Now, this team worked hard. They did a good job of establishing a society. In fact, the economy was flourishing. But as a team, they started to become affluent. And when they became affluent, they started to worry about non-necessities. They started to worry about riches, status, power. And once that happened, it went downhill fast. They became committed to the wrong things, and society started falling apart. Jesus is warning his people to be careful not to plant yourself among the thorns, because thorns at first don't seem to be that dangerous. They don't look that ominous, but they can soon overtake you. Jesus says what you worry about is often an indicator of what thorns you have in your life. Now, certainly you remember the team we sent to the planet Abundance. It is still one of the top Federation planets today. That was a team committed to learning and gaining wisdom. Now, the team did face a virus that threatened their planet, but they were prepared to face it. They didn't give up hope. They paced themselves through the challenges. And once their society got reestablished, they refused to make wealth their goal. They learned something. They trained themselves not to worry, but to trust that things would work out. Jesus is telling his people how they can grow and live more abundantly. See, when a person is growing, sometimes they don't even always understand it or really come to a realization that they are growing. But Jesus promises to them, if they follow him, they will grow, and they trust in him for that growth. But many people give up after a season. Maybe their expectations were not realistic. Growth to them is a process, but they expected to reach a pinnacle where they could eventually rest or coast in their faith. But the truth is, in fact, that when a person is in growth mode, there's a delicate balance between being content with where God has you and where he's brought you, but there's also a sting of dissatisfaction for not being as far as you would like to be, as you hope to be. So his contentment reminds you of his arms being around you where you're at. But the dissatisfaction actually keeps you willing to be led by his hand into the unknown, the scary unknown. See, our goal for our people has been to go where no one has gone before. God's goal is to have his people grow where no one has grown before. For us, the goal is centered on what we are doing, but God centers around what his people are becoming. That is their purpose. That is why they are here. So you may be asking, so what does that mean for each person's specific purpose in life? Well, the reason why so many people do not find their specific purpose is they have not embraced first the larger purpose of personal growth. And if you don't agree about your general purpose, you probably won't discover your specific purpose that God made you for. See, much of a person's journey of growth is about discovering who they are. And if you don't really know who you are, you're probably not going to discover what you were made to do. The ancient texts are clear in explaining that each person was designed for a purpose and created in Jesus Christ to do good works. So the question arises, will a person like what God designs them to do? Will they enjoy it? I think the answer seems to be yes, but with some explanation. For example, if God would send a person to the remotest part of the world, would they have a good time? Would they have a good experience? Would they feel called and equipped to do so? Yes, they will enjoy using their talents in this new adventure. They will find their souls filled in a way that nothing else can. But they must remember a couple things. Number one, God's number one goal is to help you grow. And that means he calls people at times to risk, to get comfortable with change, and to stretch people beyond their comfort zone. And many people have not grown to the point where they trust God for those things, or in the midst of those things. They are afraid to give up the good things they have because they doubt that God has better things in store for them. Another thing they have to remember, that even though God promises them that he's going to be with them, he doesn't always promise in every instance to keep them safe. And I guess that is why so many people end up as seeds that don't produce anything. They prefer to stay safe rather than find purpose. And while it's clear that God doesn't call everyone to the remotest parts of the world, God will continue to call his people into places and positions where they can best grow. Now, people often think that unless they are a missionary or a pastor, they are not doing what God wants them to do, but that's not true. If they are feeling unimportant, they miss the boat, because God is able to use them right where they are at. There is no such thing as a junior officer or a cadet in God's eyes. Now, this text describes people as both the seed and the sower of the seed. I guess that means God is the water and the light and the soil which causes the growth. Galatians 6:7-9 says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Now, when I give an order to my crew and tell them all what the plan is, I often close with the statement, "Make it so." In other words, carry out the plan. So "so" is spelled S-O, make it so. But when God tells his people he wants them to make it so, he is telling them, make it so, S-O-W. God is looking for people committed to his wisdom, to running the whole distance with him. God is looking for people who won't get divided or distracted by worries or riches. If you want to find specific purpose, your specific purpose in life, get on board with God's plan to help you grow. Now, I'm going to go see if this planet has a holodeck.